Hello and welcome to the Cricket Podcast with no name because we were too lazy to come up with a name. I'm joined by Abhishek. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm Abhishek. I'm doing fine. Can't wait for this podcast to start. Uh,
I can't wait till
um,
the podcast gets a name. Personally, that would be a fantastic start to a podcast. Except we don't have a name. Anyway,
we just realized we don't have a name when we were about to click record. So, yeah,
yeah,
the no
it's
name
as you
cricket
c-
podcast.
as you can tell, we plan our things very well. Um, but yeah, this is a cricket podcast where we're talking about what's happening in cricket every week or so, depending on what happens. So
Uh,
this
y-
episode, we're going to talk about the World Test Championship and the background and what's going on in cricket lately.
yeah. Uh, Basically, the World Test Championship is a new tournament that the ICC have introduced, and it started in 2019, and it's still ongoing. It has come to the finals right now between India and New Zealand, which we will talk about in the next podcast.
But before we get into the World Test Championship, as big as it is, there was something arguably bigger. That bit might be controversial. In the last few months, the IPL, which took a drastic turn of events when it got postponed and the venue shifted to the UAE from India. But I was pretty disappointed about that because your boys RCB were doing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's resuming, so at least it's not gonna get canceled. I was scared that it's gonna, you know, uh, I don't know, they're gonna forget about it because even PSL, I think they tried to move to UAE, and I don't think it worked.
They
But
are they are
yeah,
moving the PSL to UAE, by the way.
yeah, okay. Oh, really? Okay. Well, yeah. Well, at least we'll see RCB win this year. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to jinx it really. Let's be real here. This was a similar situation last season in 2020 in the UAE where I'm pretty sure we were like second or third the entire tournament. Then we lost 5 games in a row. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't bank on
Just,
anything. Uh,
just classic RCB. They make your hopes high and then, whew.
yeah, just
Yeah.
bottlers really at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the pitches are much different. Like Sharjah, everyone's gonna start playing there, which is like,
Yeah,
what,
the thing about
super tiny.
UAE. Oh yeah, sorry. The thing about UAE pitches is they're a lot more dry, so it's and you won't get as much dew as you will in India. So the thing about batting first versus batting second, the discrepancy becomes less in the UAE. But that's completely balanced out by the size of the grounds because like in Sharjah, it's a really small ground. It's a very old ground, but it's a very small one as well, as we remember from Rahul Tevatia's madness back last year when he hit like 5 sixes in a row. That proved to me that the ground was easy for six hitting, really.
No, yeah,
Uh,
I mean, there was also like almost like I think more than like 60-70% of the scores that was batting in first innings was above 200, and some innings were even chased even plus like 230 plus. So I mean, it is gonna be a hitting game, so batting game. So it's gonna be interesting.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how most teams fare there. But one team who didn't fare well over there, CSK. They might not be so happy to go back there, but they'd be happy to stay in India because they've been on a winning streak lately.
Oh yeah. But they didn't beat RCB today, did it? That no one can change that. Okay.
Then again, they are closer to the top of the table. The thing with the UAE is it requires a lot more spin and a lot more spinners need to be played. And the reason that CSK didn't do so well last time is it's not like Chennai where the dew comes in later, and even with the dew, the pitch is such that it turns basically the sharp turn and it's humid and hot. So it is a spinner's haven in Chennai versus Sharjah, where it's completely dry. It's also conducive for spin, but it's more flat for as a pitch, really. So it wasn't
Yeah.
conducive to CSK at all. But then Dhoni seemed to have changed his plans recently, where playing more pacers than spin. I'm pretty sure the only spinner he used the entire tournament of 2021 so far was Jadeja. I think he played Tahir one game, but he didn't do that well. I think that was RCB as well that he played Tahir in. That didn't go well.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about the CSK RCB game
Yeah.
for more than obvious reasons. You're welcome, Harshal Patel.
Well, I mean, it's also surprising because I mean, KKR also have Morgan and Cummins that are most likely not going to play in the second phase. So, I mean, that just took a drastic turn for them because I don't think they're those two players are like really important, and it's just going to be one man show for Russell, I guess.
Well, on the topic of KKR, they weren't doing that well in the IPL. I know they were a mid-table team, but they were super inconsistent with their bowling and batting. Sometimes the odd person would step up, but the thing is, they're superstars of which they paid a lot of money for, like Pat Cummins or Andre Russell, or even Morgan himself. They didn't perform to the standards. And if you want to go into this region, to the money that they were spent on. Uh, so I don't know if Shahrukh would be too happy about that. Uh, but it's okay. He has enough money, so he doesn't need to worry about any of that. Pat Cummins was a batting all rounder this IPL. Uh, probably scored more runs than he gave. No, actually gave more runs than he scored. So, uh,
I
well,
mean, yeah, I don't think he started way more than in batting than he did in bowling in this IPL.
yeah,
I
he
mean,
was pretty mediocre when it came to bowling in the
bowling.
IPL. And their strategy, which was their last season, where they tried Varun Chakravarti often, it worked for them when they were in Chennai, when they were playing in spin-friendly conditions. But the moment they moved to pace-friendly conditions, they didn't do so well, which is kind of ironic considering they have Pat Cummins. But at the same time, who are the supporting roles? They have Prasidh Krishna. I'm not sure how he did. I'll be really honest. I don't remember how I was about to call him
No,
Prasidh
again,
Krishna.
mediocre. I don't think he did anything that um exciting. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
guess we
and
can move
then
on from that then.
yeah, and then even MI don't think Trent Bolt is playing because he didn't go to England for the England New Zealand series because he wants to stay with his family. Um, which
W-
could be the same reason he doesn't go to UAE.
Isn't he in New Zealand? Isn't he in England currently though? I thought he was with the squad there.
Is he? I thought he was with his family right now because that was the main reason I think that he
Oh, okay. Well,
um
but he'll. I guess I'm supposing he'll fly over for the World Test Championship final. Uh, I mean, hey Bolt, you can stay with your family longer if you want, man. No problemo. I don't
yeah,
really
I
matter.
mean
I'm pretty sure a certain Virat Kohli would be perfectly happy with that. Uh, doesn't have very good memories against you, so.
uh, yeah. I mean, I can bet there's a few other batsmen in IPL that are not gonna play in phase two, but it's all rumors. So
It's mostly England players because I believe the ECB officials have said multiple times that they do not expect England national players to fly back to the UAE to play the IPL because they have a busy international schedule coming up because they have this New Zealand tour, they have the tour against India themselves with 4 tests. They then have the Ashes coming up in December. Between that, they have multiple ODI series and T20 series as well in the lead up to the T20 World Cup, which we'll get to later. Uh, but all these preparation for these big events like the Ashes and the World Cup means that they won't be likely to release their players for the IPL, which is completely understandable in my book. So you
yeah,
wouldn't
I mean,
expect them to play.
and to be honest, one of the they actually were planning to BCCI was planning to take out some international games to resume IPL, which was super. I was disappointed because I don't know in which world is IPL high prioritized over international games, which
Well, there's a couple
is
ways to look at that. In the sense of the IPL would serve more as preparation for the T20 World Cup than the tests. If you're talking about the fact that they're removing one test, they're thinking of removing one of the five India versus England tests in favor of finishing the IPL. Because when England did come to India, they were supposed to play 5 tests themselves, but they played four in so that they could fit in a 5-match T20 series in the lead up to the T20 World Cup. So I'm guessing the only reason that England would possibly agree to such a thing is in favor of that to fit in more T20s. But if they at the same time, if they're not sending over any players for the IPL, then I wouldn't expect them to agree
Yeah,
anyway.
how they can't really make a call without being in it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think there should be the international series happening because I don't think it's right to put cancel it for IPL.
Well, they're not going to any because
Yeah, they're not going to.
they fit in the IPL in the September October window again, and so it's very much like last year, except that, fewer matches in the UAE, making it a bit more fair in my book.
It's gonna be another short gap till next IPL. Another 6 months only you have to wait. So it's not gonna be like
Yeah, then again, we
ten
have
years
to
old.
see what the situation is in those following 6 months because the T20 World Cup itself will not be held in India most likely. The ICC have given the BCCI a deadline of June 28th to decide whether to host the World Cup in India or in the UAE. But the BCCI have pretty much like 99% made up their mind that they're hosting it in the UAE and not India. So
Yeah.
it will probably be there, which is why an IPL in the UAE would serve as more of a preparation anyway. Yeah. So
I mean, yeah, the after seeing how many what cases that just blew up in the all the like few teams in IPL the 2021 when it was in India, that's it's not going to change when like if the other teams come into the World Cup and like England are already restraining players from going out, so it's going to be hard to convince them to come back to India.
yeah, so it's extremely unlikely for any cricket, like high level cricket, to be played in India for a while now. So I'm guessing any India home games that come up within the next few months, which there are a few, I mean, there are not many. I actually can't think of a single one because the next steps for India are the Tour of England, of course, for the World Test Championship final and the Tests. At the same time, there will be a limited over series against Sri Lanka, which will involve a lot of players who have been on the sidelines for a very long time, who will get their chances now with the senior players being in England. So I'm very excited to see how they go. I believe they'll be captained by Shikhar Dhawan, but I'm not sure if that's a confirmed thing yet.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see all the players because, none of the players, all of the good players or the main players will be in England for the test. So, I think it's a good thing that we have a B team, and what Shastri is the coach, right, for
Ravi
that
Shastri is the
Sri
coach for
Lanka.
the senior team. The coach for the Sri Lankan side will be Rahul Dravid, I believe.
Rahul Dravid.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that
So I
one's a
mean,
rumor or true though, but yeah, it should be Rahul Dravid.
well, that's gonna be. I mean, that's just gonna be exciting because I mean, like players like Natharajan or like I don't know who else is there, but just young players. Even some debutants would also play because so many people have impressed in IPL um, that they'll definitely get a chance in
Yeah,
Sri Lanka.
I would expect to see the likes of like Prithvi Shaw or Prithvi Shaw if he doesn't fly with the test squad. I'm not sure if he went with the test squad, but I don't believe so. So he'd be given a chance in the Sri Lankan series. It's also a chance for Shikhar Dhawan to make a name for himself again. Not that he really needs to. He's been on fire in the IPL in the last couple seasons, but recently as an ODI opener, he's sort of been taken over by KL Rahul, who's been doing fantastically. And with
Yeah,
having to fit like a fully fit and informed Rishabh Pant into the ODI side as well, they will think of moving KL Rahul up to opener again. He was usually in the middle order for a while now, but that gives Shikhar Dhawan some fierce competition. So which is why he'll be looking to establish himself, saying that look, I'm the senior opener here. I know what I'm doing. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like even Sri Lanka have a strong side, so can't really underestimate them. So
Well,
it's gonna be a good match.
Sri Lanka is going through a bit of a rough phase right now, I would say, because they have been in like a gradual dip in like player quality and form for a while now, and that is partly to do with the board itself. Like they've been changing captains like once a day at this point. But in all seriousness, I believe they've used 9 captains since 2017. I'm not sure if it's since 2017 or since 2015 World Cup, but it's been 9 captains since then. and each of them have been sacked a while after, and many of them, like Angelo Matthews, have been captain like three separate times before being sacked each of the three times. So you can see that there's not much stability in the team management or the board, with coaches being rotated in and out, like Mickey Arthur, who is the coach now. Uh, so he's Mickey Arthur has coached Pakistan and Australia before. He's done decently for both sides, so he'll be looking to help rebuild the Sri Lankan team, who have actually included a lot more new players to their side. As for improvement, however, it's not been great. They've just lost the ODI series to Bangladesh. I should say
Yeah.
they've lost the ODI series to Mushfiqur Rahim, because he pretty much carried the
Oh,
Bangladesh team throughout that series. He
yeah,
hit like a hundred and
he
fifty.
deserved 100 in the first round, but he got it in the second, so it's good.
But yeah, it'll be exciting to see an inexperienced Indian team against Sri Lanka. Both sides have things to play for. One has young players who want to make a name for themselves. The other one is a Sri Lankan team who just want to establish that, look, we're still the team to be reckoned with, uh, and we can do it. And they would feel extremely. They would have higher hopes against an inexperienced Indian team. So it should be exciting to watch alongside the main event, which we'll move to now, which is the World Test Championship final. So we'll just for a quick recap for those who haven't been following the World Test Championship for a while. As Abhi said, it started in 2019. It's essentially a tournament where it involves 9 teams that play each other. All 9 teams don't play uh, all of each other. They play. They were supposed to play 6 of the other 8 teams, but due to COVID, since the tournament had a lot of canceled test series, that has been thrown out of the water. And that has become a system where it was the percentage of points won, which, when simplified, is the percentage of matches won that they have played. The top 2 sides from the World Test Championship were India and New Zealand, so they'll be playing the World Test Championship final this June, starting June 14th. Abhi, how do you feel about the 2 sides?
June 18th. Yeah. I think it's a very fair match. It's going to be way too close to say anything, but I mean, of course, we're supporting India. I think um Kohli needs to prove himself. He hasn't had 100 in like what? How many months
It's
or
been
years?
it's been around 450 to 500 days since Virat Kohli's last 100. It was his last international 100 was actually in the West Indies in the series right after the 2019 World Cup. Funny enough, he hit 200s in a row in that series and hasn't hit 100 since then. At least in
Yeah,
ODIs, he hit 100 in against Bangladesh in the day-night test that they had in Kolkata, which was India's first day-night test, but hasn't had a test 100 since then. If there's any platform that he could come back to form and get that 100, it has got to be the World Test Championship final, probably the biggest stage in
no,
Test
yeah,
cricket
and
right
it's
now.
literally, yeah, it's the best place he can get a century right now. I mean, it's gonna be a winning inning, so might as well get it now. But I mean, I'm just excited to see everyone play again. It's gonna be a very close thing. Williamson, oh my god, he's just in form. Like you can't say anything. He's done really well in World Test Championship. He's got 2 or 3 double centuries, which is just really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kane Williamson is
and so
currently the Kane Williamson is currently the number one ranked batter in Test cricket. It used to be a certain Steve Smith, uh, but Steve Smith and Virat Kohli had a close competition in the lead up to the Australian India Australia series, the historic one, of course, and even during that. But in the meantime, of while the public was focused on that series, little old Kane Williamson was notching up double century and century after century at home in New Zealand, and crept up to become the world's number one test batter. So it's exciting to see how he goes, especially. England has not been a favorable place for him. He averages around, I think, like 20, between 20 and 30 in England. Hasn't played as much as Kohli has, to be fair, and is currently in the form of his life. So we'll give him time, and especially since he's playing a series in England against England right now in the lead up to the final, it's perfect practice for him and the rest of the team, really.
Yeah, I mean, he's uh in form a lot, but I think he has to prove himself abroad because I don't think he's done that a lot. But I mean, I think he can do it because he's Williamson, and I mean, he hasn't even played a lot abroad, so I don't think you can judge him saying he's not good abroad. So I guess we'll see in the series against um
Against England,
England
yeah.
right now.
I guess the one thing you can say when it comes to Kane Williamson playing home versus abroad recently is, in the end of the day, you can only play the opponent you're given, and you can only play in the conditions that you have been given. So, if the ICC had set a certain number of series to be played home and away, and many of them got cancelled due to COVID, which and due to which New Zealand was stuck playing the series that they had at home and not the ones that they had away, because New Zealand were one of the first countries to recover from COVID on a large scale. So they played their series that they had at home, and Kane did well in home conditions, which is fair to him, because New Zealand is still not an easy place to bat, as noticed by other teams who have done well abroad and gone to New Zealand only to be completely flattened. Take India, take Pakistan, take England. They have all tried in New Zealand, and they've been flattened really by New Zealand at home.
No, I
So
mean, yeah, you got to give props to Williamson. He just made most of what he could. Like he knew that he's going to be playing at home for literally most of his games, and he said that yes, this is my home, this is my area. So he just started scoring runs,
yeah, and
and
that's fair play to
uh,
him.
and it's also funny because India and New Zealand have the least win rate in England.
Yeah, I saw that stat the other day. I believe India has a win percent in England of 11%. This means that they've basically won only 11% of the games that they have played in England. And judging by the fact that India have been playing in England since 1932, that is a lot of matches. And that is a lot of matches lost as well. And if you thought that was bad, New Zealand have won only 9% of their games in England. So, funny enough, I guess it's only apt that these two teams who play the worst in England statistically are playing a final in England.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be more fair.
Yeah. So, in the lead up to the World Test Championship final, India played two huge series that were basically must wins for them, because they had lost in New Zealand in January of 2020. They were pretty much flattened and whitewashed in New Zealand in the tests and in the ODIs as well. So they left there with a lower confidence level, and they had two of the biggest series that they needed to win against Australia in Australia, which admittedly they had won in 2018, but that was against a depleted Australian side, which missed on Steve Smith and David Warner due to their ban, which we do not need to get into for now. Uh,
Oh my
but
God.
but of course, in the lead up to the 2020 series, 2020 2021, uh, the the series was very much hyped, as it's two full strength teams, well, almost full strength, because Virat Kohli had a little child of his own to deal with at the time. Uh, but pretty much all full strength teams in the lead up to the series were looking to duke it out with pretty much a must win series for both teams. So it was extremely hyped up. And it was a historic series
Yeah.
because uh, India were riddled with injuries throughout. It must be due to the fact that they were coming back after a long break due to COVID, and players weren't at peak fitness level. And Virat Kohli was missing, uh, obvious reasons though. And with each game, the injury list for India grew longer, and we kept having to bring in backups after backups, because it's a good thing that we took like a 30 to 40 player squad to Australia, because we were able to pull in the backups, and that's where we really discovered the talent
Yeah,
that
I
our squad
mean,
has.
I think because of the injuries, a lot of talents like Sundar, Thakur,
Natarajan.
Siraj, Natarajan, all of them came and I mean they literally replaced our bowlers in the best level they could have possibly done. I'm not listing Saini in there.
Well, to be fair, Navdeep Saini in the one game that he did play, he did pretty much decently until he got injured, which proves really the injury horror that India had during that series. Because if you have a debutant coming in and getting injured in his first game, then you can imagine how the other players would have done under strenuous workload. To emphasize this further, the only two players who played that entire four-test series were Cheteshwar Pujara and Ajinkya Rahane. None of the
Yeah.
other players played the full series. They were rotated due to injury or just simply missing out. Uh, so yeah, and what makes sorry, that is what makes it even better that we won the series over there. So yeah, any words about that?
Yeah, I mean, the last match was just his history. I mean, the Tim Payne's line of "Can't wait to meet you at the Gabba" really backfired on him. uh, yeah, I mean, the second I saw Punt hit that cover drive, and then it hit the boundary, I was screaming. It was a good moment, and yeah,
Yeah,
it,
that
it
was
was
the
too good.
Yeah, that moment was unreal to me because like I've been watching. I think the first India versus Australia series in Australia that I watched was the 2014 one, which was when Virat Kohli got captaincy for the first time, and that was such a fiery series with like Mitchell Johnson and all those bowlers going up against this new look Indian team that was just recovering from like they had lost in like a test series against England before, and you had like this fiery captain in Virat Kohli who was leading the team. So it was a transition period for the team. We still lost in 2014, but to show the growth that was made under Virat Kohli, especially from 2014 to a point in 2018 where we could win in Australia, and to 2021 where you could beat a full strength Australian team in Australia while being not at full strength for a majority of the series is insane. And especially given the fact that in the first game in Adelaide, we were bowled out for 36, our lowest total in Test match history. There were plenty of people, a certain Michael Vaughan included, that believed that we would lose the series 4-0. And I'll admit, I thought that that we were going to lose the series after that. Like, I mean, what did you think of that at the time?
I mean, that that was sad. I mean, it wasn't all out technically. Shami retired injured,
Okay,
so
36 for 9. So,
yeah, some pride we can take. But that was just tragic to see wickets just falling after wickets. I think after that we even proved ourselves. Second game we came right back in and we won that game, and confidence was right back up. So I think India are really good at that. We normally never win our first game of the series. Like we lose it like I think what 90% of the time. Um, but yeah, the thing that it's good that we came back and we even the confidence of all the players that have played. They stayed in the um, what is it like their rhythm and they tried their best. And even Kohli, he led Kohli and Rahane. Well, Kohli had gone, so Rahane did well under captaincy. The first game he got, the second test he got 100, which is like perfect for trying to come back. So yeah, I think Rahane did a very good job in the three tests that he played for India.
yeah, the thing about India is that we saw in 2020 and 2021 is more backs against the wall kind of cricket, because the Australian series is the perfect example. First game blown away for 36, but we were ahead for most of the game. The game only lasted 3 days, and most people would admit that we were ahead for 2 of those days. And then one of the sessions, we were just completely flattened. And then moving to the next game, where it was an extremely good fight back by the Rahane led Indian team, where we were able to win. And then the third test was another backs against the wall draw because we batted what? I think like 120 overs on the last 2 days to secure a draw. And that was also the test where Tim Payne uttered the famous lines. of that he couldn't wait for India to get to the Gaba. And I heard like now it's pretty much a meme because of the events that followed. But history, the way if you look at history, right, it made sense for Tim Payne to say that because looking at it, they hadn't lost a game there since 1988, and it's also a pace bowler's paradise. So he was pretty much confident. But what he didn't realize is the fact that the player's fitness matters a lot. Australia had been playing the same
Yeah,
pace attack for four tests continuously. India, well, due to injuries, had to rotate players out and were basically playing their like fifth, sixth, and seventh uh, pace bowlers in the ranks as their lead pace bowlers. So they had more fitness, they had more energy, and they were able to outperform the tiring Australian fast bowlers, and that was extremely good to
yeah,
see.
yeah. I mean, if India had done, like not lost at any what stadium for that long, I wouldn't be surprised if what Kohli said that or someone Pant said that, because I mean, it's your ground, you've won so long. Why would you not slouch about it? But another thing is when Siraj had what is it? He was leading the bowling, which he did really good. I think he got a five in that game, so
Yeah.
it was really good to see him uh,
Yeah, it's a funny thing
taking.
about that innings where he took the fifer because it was obvious that Australia were in a position where they could push for quick runs and get a good lead because Australia were the ones who needed to win that series more than India did in the context of the World Test Championship because a draw in the series for India would work perfectly fine in their qualification for World Test Championship final. But Australia needed the win. So they were pushing for quick runs and in the process lost quick wickets as well, but still left India with a ton to chase. It was like 327. Nothing of the sort had ever been chased at the Gabba before, let alone any visiting team winning at the Gabba before. And that includes like historic Indian teams that included the likes of Tendulkar, Ganguly, Dravid, and even the England teams that came during the Ashes. It included all those historic teams, and it was this Indian team consisting of like majority of the reserves and the backup players that were discovered in the IPL and the Ranji Trophy that came in and beat a full strength Australian team, which is still unreal for me to say all these months later. So it's an extremely historic win.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm just loading up the scorecard in the teams, we won that match with Thakur, Saini, Natarajan, Siraj, Agarwal, Sundar, Gill. I mean, it's just surprising to see all these names. Like you would normally want to see like what Bumrah, Ishan Sharma,
Yeah, our
uh,
lead
Shami.
pace attack. Yeah,
Our whole bowling just got so wiped from what Cummins and all the injuries that happened. But yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I'm proud of them.
The funny thing is leading up to the series as such, it was all a talk about the comparison between the pace attacks where there was all hype about because Ishan Sharma, Mohammad Shami, and Jasprit Bumrah had been probably the best pacers in the world in the 2 years leading up to this series. uh, well, some of the best anyway, because Australia had a certain Pat Cummins, who has been the best test bowler in the world for a while now. But now it's funny to see that India turns out they did not need any of those three in the final test. But the thing to note is even the people who did get injured, whether maybe the senior players or the junior players who stepped up, everyone played their part and everyone had some sort of contribution to the series win, which is excellent to see coming from a 30 odd man squad.
Yeah, it just uh, I mean, we recovered like to the most we could have after that 36 all out game. So I think that just proves that India can recover from anything.
Yeah, and on the same topic about India can recover from anything, right after the Australian series was a home series against England. Now, leading up to that series, India are probably the most dominant side at home. It was between India or Australia as to who's more dominant. But after that certain Australian series, it was pretty obvious who was more dominant at home. India had
Yeah,
not lost a single test match in India since 2017 or a test series since 2012. So leading up to the series, I'm pretty sure most people were thinking, "Oh, this is going to be a whitewash. We're going to flatten England 4-0. They don't know how to play spin." But then England came all guns blazing in that first test, specifically a certain Joe Root who made that double century.
No, I mean, I was scared after that innings. Like, I was scared, especially because I mean, we knew that he was in form, but to see him get that score already in the first innings of the first test match game, it was just I think we all lost kind of hope because we thought that Root will carry this, but then
Yeah.
Ashwin and Akshar Patel came.
Yeah, about like there's plenty of talk and like controversy about the pitches because the first test the pitch was more flat, which saw like a 500 plus score, and then India themselves put on around like 300 later, and then got bowled out on the final day on a pitch that wasn't quite a fifth day pitch, but it was still the ball was still turning and everything, which you don't expect from a Chennai pitch usually because Chennai is known to be one of the most spin friendly places in India. And then you follow that up with things in with situation in the second, third, and fourth test, which were probably the most spin-friendly pitches seen in the country in years, where Akshar Patel in his debut series partnered Ashwin very, very well and was an apt replacement for Jadeja.
He got like four or fivers in like 5 innings. It was just too good. And I don't think the pitch was any problem because even though it was a spinning pitch, I mean it's called a spinning pitch for a reason. It's for spinners, and I don't. I think that if it was a fast bowling pitch or anything else, it wouldn't have been maybe as entertaining because I mean, who doesn't want to see wickets falling
Well,
as
yeah,
well
I
as a
agree.
keep. And I mean, when else has a 2 day test match happened? I mean, it just uh entertaining to watch that. But I mean, for the people who say like, oh, 5 day test matches are way more fun, I mean, you get to see that in every other single test match. So yeah,
Well, I would assume there's both sides to that argument because the argument in favor of of spinning pitches being completely okay, which I do agree with, is the fact that you have pitches like the Basin Reserve in New Zealand, where on day one the pitch will look like the outfield. It is that green, and you have the New Zealand pace attack ripping apart teams on day one, just flattening them with pace, swing, and bounce. You have Lords in England, you have other places in England and New Zealand, the Gabba itself in Australia, where sometimes teams don't even play a spinner there because of the fact that there won't be potent at all. Now, if you transfer that situation over to an only spin pitch, somehow it becomes more of an issue because all of a sudden teams that are used to pace and bounce, such as England and Australia, completely flop there because they're not used to spin and rough term. So that's probably why it became an issue. Now, on the other side of the argument, as for the 2 day test thing, I don't think it's a good thing to see 2 day tests because a pitch should not deteriorate in 2 days. It shouldn't be a fifth day pitch on day one. While it may make for some exciting cricket, I believe that would mean like supposing you had that the Ahmedabad pitch, right, which was the game was finished in 2 days. Now imagine that test had somehow gone to the fifth day. The pitch would just be like a minefield at that point. It was already a minefield, but then it would just be like a set of rocks. So you could pitch the ball and it would probably turn backwards towards you at that point. So I guess that's the point that people try to make about the pitch is deteriorating. As it if it deteriorates too fast, then what's the point of being a batsman at that point? It's the same argument as people make for like complete flat pitches or roads where bowlers don't get
yeah,
any help even on like day 4 or day 5 and teams rack up like 600, 700, and the game ends in a draw. Both are equally bad because it's an unfair contest towards either bat or ball. So a perfect contest to me doesn't have to be pace friendly. It can be a spin friendly pitch for 3 days of the game as
yeah.
well.
I just pulled up the third test match, and if you see, the second test match was a spinning pitch, and it was clearly shown. And in the third test match, Root he still decided to bring only 2 spinners, which I mean, knowing the pitch, and even I think there was multiple even though it was a new stadium, I think that spinners were going to take over. He got only himself and Jack Lee two spinners. Everyone else was a pacer. So I think that there he could have, if he put spinners, would have been more of a poised match.
Yeah, it was an interesting, like the last two tests, especially for me, were interesting in terms of selection because, well, you can understand about Joe Root selecting more pace in the third test, I believe, because I believe the third test was a day-night test match, and in day-night tests, has all like they've been playing day-night tests for like 6 years now, albeit never in the subcontinent. It's usually the fact that pacers are more potent, as because in the night session you happen to get more swing and movement off the seam, so pacers thrive in those conditions, which is why teams tend to play more pace in day night tests, which is the route England did take, and India did take that as well, because I believe they played Bumrah again after resting him for the second test, so they played an extra
Yeah.
pacer as well. But India's two spinners, Akshar Patel and Ashwin, did they play a third spinner in that test?
Uh, 1 second.
Okay, because
Sundar.
oh, they played Sundar, yeah. So India took
But
the
no,
more
he
conventional.
he bought 4 balls and got 1 wicket. So
Yeah. India took the more conventional approach with selection, trying to balance it because their spinners were doing well. And even though it's a day night test, Ahmedabad and the areas up north historically very very dry. So they're going to need more spin for the even the daytime. Forget the night session where pace might be more potent. In the daytime, if they can get wickets, then it's perfectly fine to have less pace. So they show that in Akshay Patel and Ashwin, and England's two spinners included Joe Root. And even though he did take a fifer, uh, that wouldn't justify him being the other lead spinner along with Jack Leach in a subcontinent game. And what made this
yeah,
even a stranger selection strategy is in the fourth test, they picked more pace. They went with Jimmy Anderson. Did they pick Stuart Broad for that fourth test?
I don't think so.
Well, I remember they played more pace. I think they played Archer and Anderson along with I think one more pacer, but they dropped the other spinner, and it was strange to see because right after a test where you've seen spin perform drastically well, and the next test it doesn't involve the night session at all. It's a completely day test match, so you know that spin is going to do better than pace. Uh, he selected more pace than spin. Any chance you can pull up the bowling attack for that fourth test, by the way, just to
No, yeah,
see?
I have it. So, it had what, Anderson and Stokes, and then Leach, Besson, Root. So I mean,
Oh, they
he
picked
did have
those.
these.
Okay, so he never mind. He picked Best as well. Dom Best. The thing is, in that first test, I believe he took a fifer. Or so he took a lot of wickets. I remember that in that first test. Uh, but it was probably some of the luckiest wickets I've ever seen, and I still remember that to this day because he got wickets with like full tosses, with like rank long hops where he just bowled it short, and got wickets. So it was some of the luckiest bowling I've ever seen. I think England, the management probably saw that because they dropped him for a test as well, which didn't make sense to the public because I mean the man just got a truckload of wickets in Sri Lanka before this, and then got a lot of wickets in the first test match, and then they
Yeah,
dropped him
he got
later
five.
on.
Yeah, he got 5 wickets in the test match. I mean, yeah, I don't think even the way he got Kohli out, I think I remember it wasn't um what is it?
It wasn't ideal for a spinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't a convincing wicket. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the management did see that and they dropped him. Jack Leach had a great series then, despite getting pummeled in the first test match by Rishabh Pant. I remember him carting him for like 6 after 6 in that first test match. We'll get to Rishabh Pant in a bit, by the way. He's had a fantastic season. Uh, but Jack Leach did recover from that very well. He was England's best bowler in that series. And having played, I believe he played all tests in that series as well. And having to perform in completely foreign conditions when in England you don't get much practice as a spinner with all the pace friendly pitches and all is extremely great for him. And yeah, I commend him for his performance in that series. So the main man for India in the last two series against Australia and England is a certain Rishabh Pant, who has come a long way since 2019. I remember after Dhoni retired in 2019, there were a lot of skeptics who are like, "Can Rishabh Pant truly replace MS Dhoni?" And then many of them just answered no. Most of them were either like blind fans, honestly, but some of them had a point because like Rishabh Pant had a disappointing season before that. He had a disappointing tour of New Zealand, a disappointing IPL before that. So things weren't really going right for him. But then he went to Australia along with the Indian team, and things just turned around for him. Let's start with his performance in Sydney during the draw that India had. He came in, I believe, at number 5 instead of his usual number 6 or number 7. Uh,
Yeah.
with India trying to aim for a draw on the last day of the test match, but it seems Pant hadn't got the memo
He
at all.
he he wanted to win.
Yeah, he
He was
went
going
for
for
the
the
win.
win.
He was
I
hitting
mean,
like
for the people
fours after
who
fours.
don't know the score, he got 97 in 118 balls at a strike rate of 82, which in a test match, even if they weren't aiming for a draw, is mad. You don't go that fast. But I mean, he couldn't get his 100, which is kind of sad. But after he got out, I think Vihari and Ashwin really took it. They
Yeah,
took it a bit.
they just
Vihari took it a bit personal, you know.
they
He was
wore
like,
the
"No, I'm not
blows.
taking it."
Vihari, for
Yeah,
those who don't know, Vihari had got injured earlier in that innings. He had pulled a hamstring, and he had come back.
even Ashwin, I think Ashwin got injured, but he still went and
Yeah, yeah.
kept going.
Neither player, for context, played in the next Test match because of their injuries, which shows how like hurt they were physically, but they were strong mentally. They were bouncers after bouncers were just thrown at them from like Cummins, Stark, and Hazelwood, and they wore blow after blow, whether it hit them or whether they left them well or avoided them. They batted about like I think 30 odd overs or 40 overs by themselves. They
Yeah, I
didn't
mean
didn't
they.
need to score many runs. They just had to play out the balls.
Yeah, I mean Vihari had a strike rate of 14. I mean, I think he was a strike rate of 7 for a long time. And then
Yeah, I
after that, he
remember
picked
that.
up. He got a few boundaries at the end when they secured the draw. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
Australia's plan during that test, for the record, in that last innings, was weird in my opinion because when you have 4 or 5 wickets left in the game, and you know that the two batsmen you're bowling against are either injured or a tail ender, you can bowl bouncers for some time, but surely after a point you have to resort to classical test match bowling, either top of off or like Yorkers or something like that, right? Which would make sense, but they just kept bowling short, kept bowling bouncers. I don't know whether that was Tim Payne's plan or not, but that helped India because they didn't have to protect their
I mean, yeah,
stumps
you
very
just
often.
need. And I mean, I think I don't know if it was this match, but I know Pujara, he got hit like what 20 times
It
with
was
the
in that match,
bouncers and
yeah.
everything. Yeah, yeah, exactly. He got 77 in 205 balls. Uh, like half of those were just, I mean, not half, but like he got bouncers after bouncers from Cummins, Hazelwood, um, Stark. It was just a rampage, and it wasn't only at Pujara. He's the one who got hit the most, but everyone got hit a lot. So I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think they should have gone for another like way of bowling because after bouncers didn't work.
Yeah, I believe they try that for like the completion of the last hour, which is like 16 overs normally. They kept going after bouncers after bouncers, and after a while, even the Indians could even get boundaries later on when Vihari, as still as he stood, flicked the ball away or guided it through third man or whatever,
No,
and
I think Vihari got all four of his boundaries at the last like 5 6 overs.
yeah, and I think they were all probably behind the wicket as well, right? Because he couldn't
Yeah.
really move properly. He had pulled his hamstring, and then Ashwin as well had got hit on the hand, his spin bowling hand, which is what prevented him from playing the next Test match. But now you contrast all these strike rates of all these players like Pujara, who batted a strike rate of 30, then Vihari had a strike rate of 14. What was Ashwin's strike rate, by the way?
30.
30. And then you contrast that to a certain Rishabh Pant, who batted at a strike rate of 80 plus, scoring 97. It's like he was batting on a totally different planet compared to everyone else. I remember, especially against Nathan Lyon, he was going after six after six, and uh, I guess when you live by the sword, you die by it, which is how we got out on I think 97. Uh, so after that, India went back to aiming for the draw, but he gave us like a hope of like an improbable win, which was absolutely insane.
Mm. I mean, yeah, which he carried on with the other test matches also, as shown in the GABA. Uh, I mean, uh, I think he's our best wicketkeeper right now for India. So well, wicketkeeper batsman, and yeah, he should do well in New Zealand.
Yeah. The more on
I
that
mean
final.
England.
Yeah, against New Zealand, I guess. More on that final test match that was there against Australia. For context, they were India were once again chasing a 300 plus total, but then Rishabh Pant came in a similar situation again. Uh, but he looked to win from the start, but he was much more measured in his approach. He didn't quite go like for six after six. He was looking to stay as long as he could while getting runs. I think he made 89, but he made it at a slightly slower pace, which is his slower pace is still a fast pace for a normal test
It's
match
still
batsman.
his slower pace is still 64 strike rate, which is like
Yeah,
no,
that's a well above average for like a test match batsman, and yet he played the role of an anchor. He had to stay in while wickets sometimes fell around him. He got in a good multiple good partnerships like with Pujara, especially, and Pujara and Pant are such an interesting combo to watch because they're so
yeah.
contrasting. You have like Pujara, who's essentially like the new wall for India, and then on the contrast you have a young guy hitting like fours and sixes against some of the best bowlers in the world. It's like completely contrasting sets of players, and yet they build such good partnerships with each other, which I guess makes perfect
Yeah,
sense, but it's interesting.
yeah, it's very interesting. It's I mean, yeah, it's always fun to watch. You know, you see one person just blocking, they take a single, and the next ball you see it's a six. Like, yeah. I mean, I don't think that Pant is um. I mean, I just feel like he's doing what he does best.
Yeah,
If he can do this in, and he's also become sensible. If you see him 2 3 years ago, he would throw away his wicket much easier.
that is an aspect of
Yeah,
this game that multiple coaches told him to work on in the past was the fact that he would be extremely prone to throwing away his wicket. Like he'd be going at a good pace and he'd be in form, but then he'll throw away his wicket trying to continue. So it was about knowing when to be sensible and when to go after the bowling that hindered him in the past, which saw his dip in form. But then he went and did some like personal training. He did, especially during lockdown and stuff. He went and did some training with his temperament, with his fitness, and everything of that sort, and came back completely like, I mean, more of the same player, really, just a lot more mature, and it's shown in his performance. Even in the tour against England, he came and the first game he again scored another 90, smashing Jack Leach all over the park and
yeah,
pretty much saving India from like an utter innings defeat in that game. So we still lost the game, but it was a lot closer than it would have been because of
it would have been. Yeah.
Rishabh Pant. Yeah,
Okay, so coming back to the World Test Championship, uh, I think that it's gonna be a very close game for the final, and that the it's gonna be interesting to watch in England. One thing to note is the teams that both teams have played. So, if you see England, I mean New Zealand, they have played only 5 series in this whole World Test Championship compared to India, who have played six. Even though this seems close, India have played 17 matches and New Zealand have played 11. So India's series were much longer than the New Zealand. So yeah, I mean, this just shows that that even with the less amount of matches that New Zealand played, they still won most of their games.
How many of those
And
games, by the way, were home and away? They have split
I
it up.
think New Zealand played, I think, one away match, one away series,
It was against
which
Sri
was against,
Lanka, right?
yeah.
Right. And
Oh wait, no, no, then two, yeah,
oh yeah, they played
against
Australia
another,
as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
They got whitewashed by Australia.
In Sri Lanka, I think they drew that series, and in Australia, they got whitewashed. In all fairness, defeating Australia in Australia isn't for everyone. Uh, but at the same time, defeating New Zealand in New Zealand is also not for everyone, as shown by what India did in 2020, and
Yeah,
where whenever teams have visited there, really. So, in all fairness, they played with what they had, and they did well with what they had. Uh, and I think like these two teams are extremely like dominant at home, but are average away, I feel, for both teams, India and New Zealand. So I think it's like a pretty perfect matchup, and it's almost apt that they are the number one and two sides in the world right now in Test cricket. And New Zealand, I believe, will be at a slightly higher advantage because they are playing a series against England right now, currently. In the lead up to the final, it's a two match test series against England. The first day was today, and the new guy, Devon Conway, uh, hit 100 on debut. I've been a fan of Devon Conway for like ages now. I think
yeah,
I like noticed him in the New Zealand like Super Smash in like 2018, and the man has been on fire since. The only reason he couldn't play for New Zealand before this is because he's actually from South Africa, and due to laws around citizenship and being a player for your country, he could only play by 2020. So, but as soon as he made his debut for New Zealand, he took to it like a hand to a glove. It was extremely easy for him. I think he's hit. He's like ranked within the top five batsmen in T20 cricket, and he's only played like 10 games. And he's hit
exactly. I mean, he's
yeah
just proving himself at every single uh
format.
format. And I mean, right now his average 132 in test matches. So
Yeah, he's still
yeah,
batting, so I guess technically it's infinity. But uh, the thing about his international debut and what's happened since then is he's ranked within the top five T20 batsmen within only 10 games. He has hit 150 and 100 in three ODI games that he's played. Uh, and his test match, he started out on fire, scoring a debut 100 at Lords against England, which is one of the biggest things to do in Test cricket. And as an opener, the guy is actually a number three batsman by trade or a number four batsman. He was promoted to an opener because New Zealand have Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor, and you can't really replace those people at number three and four.
yeah,
So he's playing at a position that is not his natural position, and so he's in insane form. So I guess it only makes sense that he scores 100 wherever he bats. He could bat at number 11 and still score 100, I think. Uh,
yeah. I mean, I actually got to know him in 2020. Actually, no 20. No, it was actually early this year against their series against Australia in T20, and he did really well against Australia. Then he did really well against Bangladesh, and yeah, he was just performing everywhere. So yeah, I mean, he's gonna do well also for I'm pretty sure he's gonna be picked for the World Test Championship.
he should be picked for the final, really, because I think this 100 has secured him. If not already, he's secured by this 100. Even if he gets like a first ball duck in the second innings, he's pretty much
Yeah, I
secured
mean,
for that final against India. That's another thing for India to worry about, though, because now you have both Conway and Williamson in world class form, and you have that bowling of Saudi Bolt when he comes back, Wagner, one of the best bowlers in the world right now, and Kyle Jamieson, who has been on fire when he's played in New Zealand. Hasn't played a game away though, but
no, yeah,
I guess
last time he destroyed us when we toured New Zealand.
Yeah, it's pretty ironic because the last time he did played against India was his debut series, and
Yeah,
he ripped apart India in that series along with all the other bowlers. And he has played all his games in New Zealand, but he's done extremely well in New Zealand, like averaging around like 14 with the ball, which is insane numbers even for a guy with fewer wickets. But I guess if you're going away from home and as a New Zealander, you had to pick the perfect conditions to bowl in, it would 100% be England. It's the most similar conditions to New Zealand, which puts New Zealand at even higher advantage because it's
yeah,
it's almost like home for them. Very pace friendly, less spin friendly. I'm surprised they picked a spinner for this test match against England. They picked Mitchell Santner. Uh, I guess it
yeah.
makes
And
sense considering Bolt is not playing, but England
yeah,
didn't
if
pick
Bolt was
a
playing,
spinner.
if Bolt was playing, I don't think Sandro would have been there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
But I guess they want to test out a spinner in England before the World Test Championship final, just to see, if
yeah.
it
I mean,
works.
this could just be like what is it? Just trial and error. You just place by players and try seeing where they can do and work.
Yeah, because otherwise a full strength team, I believe, would just have the quartet. You'd have Saudi, Wagner, Bolt, and Jameson just firing away at India's top order batsmen, and that's it. That's an extremely scary thought as an Indian, really. Uh,
Yeah,
so
exactly. I mean, as in for India, I think we've already got a team like set, so I don't think we need to at least like try any players out. Because our openers are going to be Rohit and Gill, which are both Gill is doing really well, and Rohit is just doing his stuff. Um,
it'll be interesting to
uh,
see Rohit in England, I feel, because England, again, is a more pace friendly location. He played in Australia, which suits his strength well because there's a lot of bounce. We all know Rohit Sharma is great at the pull shot and he's great against the short ball. So it was played more to his strength in Australia. But England and New Zealand plays more to his weakness, which is the swinging ball, specifically the outswinger. So it'll be interesting to
yeah,
see how he faces up against high class fast bowling in swinging conditions. As for the other opener, you mentioned Shubman Gill. I'm not sure if it'll be Shubman Gill or Mayank Agarwal because both have had interesting runs of form as of late. Agarwal had an insane 2018 through 2019, and Gill
yeah,
made his debut in the series against Australia and did decently. He got I think one or two fifties, I think, in there,
yeah,
but then didn't have a great series against England. Didn't have a great IPL so far, but that shouldn't be taken into account really when it comes to test
yeah.
matches. So it'll be interesting to see who they pick. I'm guessing they'd probably lean towards Gill as he's the current opener, and just to not shake things up. But
I mean, it's good that we have choices, right? I mean, if you see any spot we have, I think we can. We're every a lot of players are flexible. Like even if you want, you can put Rahane higher. But I mean, I'm just saying it's not gonna happen. But like our 3, 4, and 5 is already set: Pujara, Kohli, and Rahane.
yeah,
And then
you'd have Pant at 6. You'd possibly have Jadeja at 7 because of his batting improvement. The man's a crazy good batsman now. I think he averages like 55 in the World Test Championship so far,
yeah,
which is insane numbers for a batsman, let alone as an all rounder. Whether it be home or away, insane numbers for a guy who normally bats at 7 or 8. Jadeja is a man
yeah,
who could just bat at like 6 or 5 as well. The man has 3 triple centuries in the Ranji Trophy,
yeah. It's
which is most
ridiculous. I
batsmen's
mean,
dream. And as an all rounder, if you do that, that's even crazier. So
I mean, even getting 3 centuries is a dream. So like,
yeah,
uh,
so he's an able batsman. He's proven himself. So even if India are worried about playing two spinners in England or whatever, even as a pure batsman, he can slot in like perfectly
no,
fine
yeah,
at 6 or
even
7.
Jadeja can come in even at 7 or 8, because he can play with the tail end really well.
Hmm.
And if it's first innings and our top order does really well, then he can just come and hit another 20, 30 runs quickly or
Yeah,
something like
him
that
and
to just
Pant.
boost the
Yeah,
score. Yeah, they just come in. And I mean, Ashwin's also like his century in England was amazing. I mean India
yeah,
against
against England.
England. It was. I think it was his main highlight of the last like how many years?
In
Because
terms of the bat, yeah, he was usually a good
yeah,
batsman. Like a while ago, like in 2016, I believe he has four Test hundreds now, I think, but
five no.
five now with the England one. But in 2016, I think he hit two hundreds, one against England and one against the West Indies. So he was like what Jadeja is now at that time. But since then, he's had like a drop of form with the bat. Always been good with the ball, uh, but now is even better with the ball away from home. So and now that he's got his batting ability back, perfectly fine to slot him at number eight, regardless of
Yeah,
conditions.
I mean, yeah, I think he's a dependable, like, if you want him to stay in and defend, like he's proved it with Vihari, and he's also got runs in England, against England. So yeah, I think he's a dependable batsman. So we do have a deep batting order,
Yeah, it's always good to
and
have like our two, especially our two main spinners who bat really, really well. So that
yeah,
we play spinners in England where normally they're reluctant to play spinners because normally you don't play spinners in pace friendly conditions, and also they would be cumbersome because they can't bat, but ours can. So we can play them at seven and eight, and then put our three main pacers, Ishant Sharma, Mohammad Shami, and Jasprit Bumrah are our first choice
yeah,
pacers. And now, depending of if any injuries happen or whatever, we always have the backups. We have Shardul Thakur. We have uh,
Siraj.
yeah, we have Siraj. Those are the probably the first two that you look. If you want to look further, you'd have Natarajan. You'd have even Navdeep Saini. The list
Yeah.
goes further on. So we have
They
plenty
might
of
even do it.
backups.
I mean, it's only one. It's a one-off test match, so I don't think there'll be that many injuries. Hopefully, crossing my fingers. I just
Yeah,
don't want a main batsman to get a main player to get injured before the like during training, because
yeah.
that's happened a lot
A thing to look at as well is right after that there is that five test series against England.
against him.
There's probably like six tests almost back to back for India.
Yeah,
So I guess during that series against England, at least they'll probably rotate more players
and
just for
it's
the
all it's
fitness.
all in this month. All the action is in this month, so
Yeah, with
it's
the
gonna
World
be
Test Championship final, with the England versus New Zealand series, it's a huge month for cricket, really, and
yeah,
yeah, it's really exciting to see what's going on. There's a lot of things that could come out of this month. By the end of the month, you would have a World Test Championship winner. You'd have a number one Test side in the world. Yeah, so yeah, it's a mouth-watering prospect, really, of what's going to happen in the coming month, and we will be covering it here. More about the podcast now. Uh, we'll be doing this weekly, most likely. So we'll be covering what happens weekly. We'll cover more on the England versus New Zealand test that's currently going on after it is over, so that we can discuss the test fully and see how it leads up to the World Test Championship final. Also, after that, we'll be covering in the lead up to that final. There's plenty of other cricket action that's happening around the world. There's plenty of other topics in cricket to discuss about. So we'll be covering all that as well. And also, if you want if you see this and you want us to cover more topics and a wider range of topics, or any specific topics that you think you would enjoy hearing about, go ahead and leave them either in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or you can tweet at me, or you can. Avi, do you want me to plug your Instagram or?
yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, you can DM Abhi's Instagram. I'll put the links and the ads to both of them in the description on both Spotify and on YouTube. Yeah, thanks for watching the Cricket Podcast with no name. We should have a name by the next podcast. Or you'll probably know our name by the release of this podcast, but we don't. So
Yeah,
you already know much more than us.
it might be in the title, to be honest.
Yeah, it might be in the title. Just imagine I'm saying what is in the title. Thank you for watching. Uh, Keep your eyes peeled. There's not only more cricket content coming from me and Abhi, but there's plenty of cricket content coming from around the world. So, plenty of action to look forward to.